welcome everybody today to today's Market Explained podcast and video series. And we are doing an interview today. This is not a market commentary episode. We periodically interview major important players that we find interesting in the securities industry and the financial industry and other industries as well. But today we have a longtime pro in the financial industry, and she's a little different profile than many of the folks that we'll interview on this. She's a lady, Ilonka Nobles, and Ilonka is the president and CEO of Nobles and Richards down in Plano, Texas. And she's got a lot to say, and she's had a very interesting career. And we want to talk about what she's doing in the business and what it means to investors. So Ilonka, welcome to today's Market Explained, a 4-star media event.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's great to see you.
Great to see you too. And I was excited to do a discussion with you because I think you've had some really interesting experiences, and many people who have worked with investors for many years are used to the Merrill Lynch's and the Morgan Stanleys, and there's like a whole vibe to that whole part of the industry. But there's a whole nother part of the industry, the independent advisor world, which I'm now in as well, along with you in the last 8 years. But you've been in it a long time, and you have some really interesting experiences. So Ilonka, just looking at our show notes here, you've been in the industry since 1996, leadership role since 1998. You're co-founder of the firm, Nobles and Richards. And let's talk a little bit about how you founded the firm and maybe your background before that and how you came up with Jim Richards to found Nobles and Richards.
Well, I started at a captive oil and gas broker-dealer. That simply means that they had a dedicated team that sold directly to investors. And when I left that company, I went to consult to other issuers of securities. And during my consulting practice, some of these issuers wanted their own captive broker-dealer. And I assisted through that process in, sitting in the president, chief compliance officer seat, getting them through the membership process, and then getting them staffed up and trained. And then I would step out of the corporate side and then continue to consult for them. Well, I had multiple going at one time. So one of the individuals that I had pulled into these was the financial operations principal, Jim Richards. And we decided that we could be more efficient if we started Nobles and Richards and let those same companies become branches or franchise out our broker-dealer to these companies. And that worked out very well. We were, it streamlined things very well.
Nice. Well, so you started the firm with Jim, and it had a lot to do with direct participation programs, and then you developed a branch office system too, right?
That's what we offered under Nobles and Richards, which was rather unique in FINRA's mind. They were curious about how this kind of developed because they said we were the only ones doing that, offering the basically white labeling private placement offices under the firm. So, and over the years, I've had 7 dedicated branch offices, 5 of which were oil and gas. The other 2 were a mix of real estate and other investment options, but still all in the private placement side.
Okay. So then how did that work then? The branches had clients, and then there were a series of offerings that were approved, or how did that work?
Well, so we were still the main back office for everything, approved everything. I'm the CCO of every branch, and they would basically, branch office, company name, securities offered through Nobles and Richards. Mm-hmm. So they got to hang their own shingle on the door with the clarification that it was going through Nobles and Richards.
Right. So they had to put that like on their card and some of their brochure and that kind of thing. Okay, great. So then what kinds of clients do you think what's the profile of client that was being served by your branches?
Typically accredited, but high net worth, some non-accredited. In the oil and gas side, those with a higher risk tolerance that could benefit from the tax write-offs of direct investments in oil programs. Most of the investment sizes are typically 50 to 100,000, but there would generally be some class shares to allow $1 million investments. Not the. I'm sorry. Say again.
I said high net worth individuals interested in programs like that.
Yeah, sophisticated, something to complement what they're doing. You know, they've got their Edward Jones guy and they're doing their stocks, but this would balance out. And this is not something they could just go find on the street. So the selling agents would have to go find the investors and present it to them.
Interesting. So like in a typical Merrill Lynch office, they have a bunch of brokers or financial advisors, they're called now, or investment executives or whatever. And they have a lot of clients with mutual funds and everything. That's not really the kind of is it? You're more in the alternative space.
That's right. These are a direct participation program is defined as an investment that allows for the flow through of the tax consequences. So the investor is like a member in an LLC or a limited partner in a partnership, and this allows them to get the flow through of the tax consequences like write-offs and whatnot.
Yeah. No, so Ilonka, I think this is really an interesting development. So for 30 years of my career, I was at one of those large firms, and they didn't really have unique alternatives. And we didn't even realize that there were brokerage firms or broker dealers in America that did primarily direct participation programs like this. So once 8 years ago, once I founded Four Star, then this whole new world developed, and we met a number of years ago at a conference, and we realized there are literally hundreds of investment firms that do direct participation programs as their primary business, and you're one of the leaders in it, which is great. Which is great. So, but it's fascinating that there are a lot of ways to do the investing business, whether it be real estate or oil and gas or different types of programs, and a lot of firms do it differently. Usually at the big wirehouse firms, where you don't get that kind of unique investing program that you might get from the programs that would come through your firm or some of the other smaller direct participation broker dealers around the country. So it's really, I think it's fascinating. Now, Ilonka, I have to kind of check in this other issue that you don't look like the normal kind of grizzled Texas oil man that people would expect. When you say, I'm going to talk to a broker dealer down in Texas about doing oil deals, you expect some big old burly character with a cowboy hat on or something like that, but you couldn't be further from that. So Ilonka, how did you get into this business originally?
Well, funny enough, I found a very generic, non-descriptive ad in the newspaper that only had a phone number and a company name. So I called it and asked about it. I didn't. They said it's an oil and gas firm. It's a sales position. I didn't have any sales experience. They said, well, women don't do good in this business. Right. And I said, is it something that can be learned? And they said, well, yes. And for 6 weeks, I hounded them. And finally, they brought me in and said, why do you want to work here so much? And maybe it was because they told me no. And I said, they said, well, persistence counts for something in this business, so we're going to give you a shot. And nice. So 6 years later, I had left with my principal's license. I had learned a lot there, went out to consult to the industry. And 6 years after that, I started my own firm to be of greater service in the space. And here we are today.
It's a great story. It's like the copy room man makes well. And only in this case, it was Ilonka just pushing her way in the industry. So you weren't from Central Casting. You weren't a big old grizzled man. And they're like, well, okay, let's give this gal a shot. And that's how you got in the business, and that's how you developed a love for it, and then ended up running your own firm over time.
I found that I had a sort of a knack for all the tricky legal avenues and how this industry can be very complex with, you can't do this unless and until you do this, and it has to be this way. And but I have a knack for the compliance side, and it's exciting business. There's a lot. I learn something all the time. I still learn something all the time, and there's just no end to it. It's like you can't reach a point where I figured it all out. There's nowhere to go from here. There's so much more that can be done.
Yes. So Ilonka, since Four Star is founded, we're doing a lot of private placements and alternative investing as well. And you've been at this for quite a while. So what kinds of investments might people see from the advisors that are hooked up with Nobles and Richards in oil and gas and other areas? What gives an example of some of the programs that are approved on your platform?
Well, we have everything from buy and hold, wait for a capital event in 5 to 7 years, to things that are, distributing cash flow on a monthly or quarterly basis. We've got tax advantage programs for those that are high income earners. We've got, the plain vanilla real estate that, the workhorse of investments. We have, different sectors in real estate, commercial, multifamily, single family built for rent. We have, and that's really what we've tried to do over the last several years is, especially since the regulation best interest came into play, we decided we really needed to broaden our offering choices so that investors had more things to look at that might help complement not just one of those, but multiple of them that could help them, in their portfolio.
Yes. Now you mentioned a bunch of real estate opportunities. Back on the oil and gas, what kinds of opportunities are now with oil prices being high? Is it drilling? Is it royalty programs? I mean, what kind of investments can people make now in oil and gas?
Actually, both. And the way that oil and gas is cyclical on prices sometimes has this effect on how much activity the drillers or the old people are willing to invest in. But right now it is evident that people want this. And so we do have a variety of types. There's horizontal drilling, there's vertical drilling, there are royalties. There are some oil and gas sponsors that take a little piece from a whole bunch of different other operators to kind of create their own fund sorts. There's still the traditional, we don't really do wildcatting anymore, but there's still the traditional 2 or 3 well package that if this works, it's going to be, very profitable. But if it doesn't, this has to be your fun money.
Yeah. You'll lose it all, right?
Yeah, right.
So these are not for the faint of heart, but if in that small segment of your portfolio where you can take a flyer, essentially, you could have a 10x or a 20x or something in oil drilling. And yeah, you're right. We used to call it wildcat drilling, right? No one really does wildcatting anymore. But
well, so much has been developed now. It's less of a, poking holes in the ground, hoping you hit something. And the technology has increased dramatically over the last 20, 30 years to really help you on 3D seismic, letting you look under the ground with the radar and the visuals and seeing what's happened in the field next to you gives you more data to what, there's a lot going on in that space for sure.
So Ilonka, you mentioned horizontal drilling, and some people have heard of that. Tell us a little bit about that in general. What is horizontal drilling?
So the traditional drilling was you stick you drill straight down and you hope to perforate or find the zone that you can generate the produce out of.
Mm-hmm.
Horizontal drilling, instead of trying to find the right zone, you go down and you try to drill right into that zone, and then you perforate it, or you try to access, and so it works very well in the shale here in North Texas has a lot of shale, and it allows for more efficient drilling.
Nice. So where is that done more so? Is it done in, you say it's done in Texas. Are there any other regions of the country that do a lot more horizontal type drilling?
We are seeing that horizontal drilling is a technique that's used more and more, depending on the play or the zone and the area. But horizontal is used more and more as a technique in all kinds of areas.
Nice. So there's some great opportunity out there with oil prices up where they are. These are things we can all look at, and you and I talk about these programs all the time, and lots of our clients participate with, they're more aggressive money. It's not something for a very, very conservative investor, but nonetheless, it could be very profitable, as you say. Well, that's great. So tell me about, now you busted your way into the industry, and just by sheer entrepreneurial skill. How does it feel to be a female CEO in a brokerage industry, which is very, very male dominated?
I don't notice it. I forget what people might see because I feel like I'm sitting there elbow to elbow with them and I don't notice it. So every now and again, I'll get some little lady comments like, "You own your own firm, good for you," stuff like that. But I don't notice it. And as a matter of fact, a lot of my long-term friends in the business have said things that they feel like I'm like one of the guys, and I don't, like I said, I don't really notice it. It's other people probably notice it a lot more than I do.
Sure. Oh, I bet they do. And they might be intimidated by you as well, because you got great spirit. So under your supervision with you and Jim, Nobles and Richards has offered over $200 million worth of programs across 50 different projects. Can you think of any particular project that your firm has been involved with investors that you liked a lot, or just one you would like to mention, a favorite project?
Well, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but the ones that are funded quickly and pay out well are obviously my favorites.
There we go. So it's a financial transaction for sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And we got involved in a marina deal recently. And so that was a unique thing where we're funding the development of a marina in Tennessee. So there's lots of different things that investors can do that are not your basic stock and bond at like you say, Edward Jones or Merrill Lynch or something like that. So, well, good. So you've been at this a while and you're leading the firm. Could you maybe share with everybody, obviously there's good times and bad times in any business. What's been one of the biggest, most difficult times that you've had in the business since you and Jim started Nobles and Richards?
The regulatory side of things kind of goes in waves, where there's something that is a focus, and then the regulators come in and tear firms up looking for if there's an issue. I don't want how to say that, but I guess for me personally, one of the most frustrating time periods was when the Department of Labor was tossing around a fiduciary duty for brokers. And that's kind of a conflict because brokers are hired to raise money. They're paid commission. That's their incentive. And that flies in the face of being a fiduciary. So the conflict was so inherent that you can't be a commissioned person and a fiduciary. And the Department of Labor was throwing this around, and we had to stop. We pulled the plug on, or we had to stop making recommendations to anyone who wanted to use their self-directed IRA to make investments. And investors were very unhappy about this because they were these vehicles that they've set up that allowed for them to make these kind of investments that they can't get at Merrill Lynch. And these were very tax efficient for them. But if they were going to use their retirement vehicle, we wouldn't let them make the investment. And my reps were upset about it, saying the investors were complaining about it. And when my reps would say, what can I tell my investor? Like, tell your investor to call a congressman, because so for about a year and a half, we stopped selling to investors that wanted to use their self-directed IRA account to make their investment. And it was pretty rough.
Yeah. So government driven kind of, in a sense, right?
Absolutely.
Regulation driven. Well, that's okay. Well, that's always an issue. And can you share with everybody what you think your vision is now for the future? Where does Nobles and Richards go? What do you hope to develop? How do you hope to serve investors?
Well, we are, we're traveling once or twice a month to the conferences, meeting sponsors, looking for the best opportunities to bring back to the reps, and helping sponsors, reach their goals to bring the best opportunities to market. Great.
Well, that's awesome. And what do you think your best personal opportunity is in the future to keep growing the firm, more branches, taking over the world? What do you plan to do in the future?
Well, as a firm, it was really born out of my consulting activity. So I consider it a tool in that basket. My number one frame of mind is how can I serve in the best way? So when there's needs, whether it's at the investor level, the rep level, or the sponsor level, we just want to keep maximizing value at all those levels. And so the growth opportunity is just doing it at scale.
Nice. So the more serving more clients in a more effective way over time. That's great. That's fabulous. Well, good. Well, I always ask this really uncomfortable question, Ilonka, that about 1,000 people in the next year are going to see this, either hear the podcast or see the videos, either on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So imagine that you're in an auditorium with 1,000 people, and you could get a message to those people today about investing or about the industry, about the financial world. What would you like to tell this great group of people that are watching us today?
That the securities industry is evolving very quickly, and there are so many opportunities out there that could benefit from, I don't know how to say this smoothly.
All right.
There's because of this the regulation isn't always bad, that some of the new regulations are bringing more opportunities to investors and somewhat democratizing, and so that everybody, even at Main Street, can participate in these things that were typically only reserved for the wealthiest.
So we get some opportunities for going forward.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, good. Well, it's been really a pleasure to have you with us today on the Today's Market Explained 4-Star Media broadcast here at Ilonka. And I think everybody will enjoy hearing your comments. And we enjoy working with you on a lot of different things as well between 4-Star and Nobles and Richards. So I'm glad you spent some time with us today. And thanks so much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate you.
All right. Thank you. Same here. And that's it for today, everybody. We'll be back with another market commentary podcast interview here shortly, and also some other interviews with great entrepreneurs who are making a difference for investors in America, like our good friend Ilonka Nobles. So thank you, Ilonka, and let's move on and continue on with our day. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.